Hey Manipal, I'm Keshav and I'm speaking to you from Delhi. And it's a pleasure to be at the TEDxMAHE countdown. I'm so happy that today we are discussing something so close to my heart as well as very, very aligned with our organizational work, which is the climate crisis that faces us all. Today, I'm very lucky to be speaking to all of you via this wonderful platform of the countdown. Um, Today, I will be discussing a little bit about what I do, what our organization does, and uh, how we can take climate action. And that's what the topic of my presentation and discussion will be today. That is demystifying climate action. How can you help? And this conversation couldn't have come at a better time because as we are in the COVID-19 pandemic, here we are today, right, gathering from around the world on a virtual platform to discuss climate action, something that is in the making as a crisis for a long time. But I'm grateful to everyone, for that matter, who has taken out their time and hopefully that they will keep engaging in climate action. And through my presentation, I will try to address amongst this vast issue of climate, which touches upon 1 billion issues, a very small segment of that as to how can you act and how can you act as young people, how can you act as experts. So I think by the end of this conversation today, I hope that as I share my journey with you and certain lessons, what I've learned, that together we will be able to get some clarity over that question of how to act and how to help. So, um, a little bit of a context of where I see the climate crisis. Today, during the COVID-19 pandemic, we are in a reality where natural disasters don't surprise us so much as they trouble us. A forest fire in a big area, or glaciers melting, icebergs melting, floods coming, droughts coming is an everyday reality for us. So, when the COVID-19 pandemic hit us, we saw that human activity, which we saw and which we thought was unforeseeably perennial, ceased to be. So we all went into lockdowns. And then we saw, especially if I talk about India, that just pausing and ceasing of human activity led to replenishment of rivers, if we see, or air quality. And as you all know, I'm from the world famous capital, Delhi, for the country, India, where we have smog as an everyday issue during the winters. So, so here we are trying to demystify this climate action, and this COVID-19 pandemic has led to some positive areas. But when we talk to the experts, we see the rise in plastics, rise in microplastics. Pollution is coming back again. The air quality today in Delhi is not something that we are all proud of. And but the one good thing is that more people today are trying to act. So uh, a little bit about, as in my introduction has already been made by the team, I will be talking about what is my key takeaway in how to act and what to do. And I will try to touch upon a few examples, a few stories of inspiring people and situations from Brazil, from Sweden, from Afghanistan, Nepal, India, and we will try to reflect together, hopefully, about what is it that we can do. And to begin with, I want to touch upon a very quick story about one of our partner organizations called Brazil India, and they work in the Amazonian region in Brazil and in the Himalayan region in India. And the reason I'm talking about them is because one of the messages that I got while working with them is what I'm going to extensively talk about. That is how to use these three things, that is head, heart, and hands. And that's the wisdom I will probably be sharing, with a caveat that it's not my wisdom, it's something that I've learned on the field. And I will be spending 5 minutes discussing the head part, and then the heart part, and then the hands part. And the rest of it we will probably take up in the questions. Now, what are these head, hands, and heart that I'm talking about? We all know these three words, we use them at least once every day, I guess. And I've tried to break down climate action into climate crisis and then the action bit. So I'm going to start in this head, hands, and heart process with the head. And there's a very popular saying in Buddhism, which is called, um, to be able to differentiate between what is and what appears. And the whole last many years, when I've been working on climate action, this has been a journey of trying to really actually differentiate what is of climate crisis versus what appears. So I'm going to touch upon quickly a few lessons that I have learned. And the first one is that the right knowledge is critical to the right action. So we, as young people, and in around us, when we see most of a lot of climate action is about planting the 5 trees next to you or doing an awareness and so on. But one of the key things that you can do while you are strengthening your own climate action or understanding the climate crisis better is to develop the right knowledge. And to develop the right knowledge, you need to know and trust the science of climate change. You need to understand how the global warming is happening, which are those areas, which are those critical ecosystems to be preserved for those purposes. And that is where this what is question becomes very relevant. I used to think that every action is supremely important, and to be fair, that I still think so, that every action is supremely important. But I also started understanding that climate action and climate science is is the bedrock of if you want to make tangible changes, if you want to ensure that the temperatures don't rise, that the snow caps stay whatever wherever they are and however they are today, you have to trust the science. You have to be able to understand what is the global issue, how is it happening, who are the stakeholders, and you have to at the same time be clear on what the local issue around you is. And that is where this differentiation of global issues versus local issues, the severity of them both, how do they affect each other, becomes extremely important to begin with. So that's what I mean when I say to start differentiating between what really is and not what appears. Because certainly when you do a good deed, you feel great, and but then that may or may not be the most amount of impact that can be made in such a situation. And let me just very quickly touch upon one experience where I realized this more than the others was when the in 2015, when there was the Nepal earthquake. I was in Nepal for about 15 days or 20 days to do relief work. And I went in with this whole model of I need to go to the far flung regions and I need to deliver aid myself physically. It would definitely give me a lot of gratification. But then I realized that one of the things that was missing there was just content writers who could write grant proposals, who could train others in Nepal to coordinate action better. And then there were so many other people who could do that other task of delivering the resources. And that's where I started understanding that for us to understand where to act and how to act, it becomes a lot about understanding the problem, rather than the action that you want to take. So start with the problem, know the solution, know the science before you go into any action, I would say. And finally, don't confuse modernity for advancement. That's the biggest myth that got broken for me as a young person who was always brought up in an urban environment, where I used to think that anything that is modern is necessarily great and as a solution. And one of the key learnings that I have derived is to really trust also the indigenous communities. the previous knowledge that has already existed, it is very important for us to preserve ancient knowledge, because those communities have sustained and survived in the same world with the same nature without creating this climate crisis, which is so unprecedented in so many ways, in the sense of the man-made aspect of it. So climate action is starts with the right knowledge, and that's where your head, your intellect comes in. Your reading skills, your research, talking to more people. But talking about climate action, that has everything to do with heart as well as it has to do with your head, because climate action is about the people. It's the people who are the solution. It's the people who are the victims. It's the people who are affected. And it's the people who are the hope always. You can't do any of climate action alone. And everyone's important. That's one of my key understandings. Every generation matters. You have to be collaborative. And trust building is one of the most critical things in this entire process, because climate action can only be successful when it's long term, when it's sustainable, and when it harmonizes our way of living with with the world, with the nature, with the other people around it. We can't be so absorbed with ourselves, with our needs and wants, that we sacrifice a future, a healthy, a safe future for the children of the world who we owe to this future. And uh, and things like sustainability, kindness, compassion, we often confuse them as the end points that we're trying to achieve, whereas they're really the starting points with which we need to begin our solutions, our understanding of the problem. And let me give you a very basic example from Uttarakhand, in the forest regions. And we often talk about deforestation and we blame the poor people for it. But they probably need the shelter, they probably need the food, they probably need the same things that you and I do. So, can we really solve the problem of deforestation without empowering or addressing the needs of the people who live there? So in Brazil, they have a very popular indigenous saying, which basically translates to that you need to protect the indigenous communities and protect the protectors, and then they will take care of their forests. So now, why am I discussing this? And this happens very often when we are into climate action and we have started adopting that what is and the intellectual approach of a little bit of biocentrism inside of it, that we often start ignoring our own volunteers' comfort, the problems that they may face. And that is never sustainable. That is not out of heart. And if we need to tell other people to change their lifestyles, to change their own models of operation, of living, then it becomes very important to think of how that happens in the most comfortable, sustainable way, which is harmonized with the biodiversity and with um, the needs and expectations of the future generations. It's really that simple. So we have understood so far what I meant when I said about heart and head. How do you think from your head and work from your heart? But then how do you really use your hands to act in the field? This probably really defines who you are, what your journey is going to be, and whether you end up with a Nobel Peace Prize or a Nobel Prize in chemistry while solving the climate action and the climate crisis, which I really hope happens with one of you who's listening in. Um, so, so when we talk about the hands, let's first understand that this all starts with yourself. That is to know yourself, know your skills, valuing all of them, whether it's your hobbies or otherwise, strengthening them, diversifying them, and having them aligned with your passion. So, if you're a painter, use painting towards climate action. Ensure that you are sustainable in the way you paint. And what you do is really the starting of a change making that should start from you, and once you do that successfully, you can inspire everybody else without really even talking about your work. With your positivity, with your hope, with your resilience, with your creativity. Let me give you a very quick example. I was in a village in Uttarakhand and we were discussing on using greenhouses for vegetation, for vegetables and fruits in the Himalayan region. And that required a small amount of investment that the farmers had to make, and a part of the investment was made by the government. There were NGOs trying to promote it, trying to do these workshops, awareness. We also tried a lot. And then I was sitting with somebody in the village, and that person sat me down over a cup of tea in a very picturesque sort of a Himalayan place. And he said that, look, if you want the whole village to take up the greenhouses, it's very simple. Just convince one of them, and for one season, let them profit from it. And then you will see that everybody will invest the money. You won't even need government investment in that. So that just sort of really helped me understand that in our culture, a lot of these things come from imitation. And then the change, as Gandhiji said, begins with you, and the change begins at home. So use the hands to firstly have an impact on yourself, on your own vicinity as well. And which brings me to my next point, that if local solutions are done well, then global solutions will also be done well. And global solutions can only work if the local solutions work. So you have to, uh, while you are working on the global issues, don't be ignorant of the issues which are around you. And the people who are working on those areas, extend support to them as well. It doesn't need to always be a formal collaboration or a partnership, etc. You can just do your bit there as well. So that's very critical. And then to understand how your solutions are very critical, but so are the solutions that other people are offering. So it is important to consider them, to give them equal weightage, to give them equal hearing, and to see how your solution and the other solution can be clubbed together, maybe. And finding common value is what will help you to forge successful collaborations across spaces. And you will, once you've started understanding the value of that collaborative plan, you will be definitely seeing a great sort of increase in your own impact space. So this is what I understood when Claudia had told me about the head, hearts, and hands as three things that we can use to fight this adventurous battle of climate, which not only affects you and I, but our every loved person, and literally everyone, biodiversity, animals, everyone around us that is living and breathing, so to say. I think I would like to remind all of you that climate action is not about saving Mother Earth. It is not about having another planet or saving this one. It is really about saving yourself, saving all of us. It is really about preserving our own lifestyles. It is about having our succeeding generations also have the same luxury of peace and a good habitat that we have had the luxury of, courtesy our previous generations, and and I mean it in every way possible, good and bad ways both. So thank you so much for hearing me, and I hope that through my discussion today and and the question answers that follow after that, we are able to or you are able to understand how you can help. So the last learning from all of that is that the change begins with you, the initiative begins with you, and the journey begins with you. So, so good luck, and I hope that this time that you spend with us inspires you, motivates you, and I hope that in the coming time I'm able to hear more about your success stories as we applaud the recovery and healing from this COVID pandemic of the whole civilization and including the biodiversity and the planet. Thank you so much.